Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. We're going to talk about teenagers one more time.
We need to.
Well, not just one more time. We're going to talk about one more time this week.
But we're talking about a subgroup of teenagers here.
Right.
We're talking about the newly minted.
The new teenagers.
The new teenagers. Because there's a difference.
Right. And so this is an article from Psychology Today from Dr. Carl Pickard. Did I pronounce it right?
Is it Pickard? P-I-C-K?
Pickard?
I think.
Yeah, something. And the
or it could
title...
be Luke Picard.
Ooh, that would be... It could be, but there's usually that has a Q in it, right?
That's cute.
So the title of the article is Parental Adjustment to Early Adolescent Communication. I like this idea because it is very true. And we talk about some very similar things in our book, but also in previous podcasts. Mm-hmm. But he kind of lays things out pretty nicely.
Right.
And basically what he's saying is that during those tween years, like 9 to 13, when that transition the transition from childhood to adolescence?
There is, because, and I was glad to see him talk about early adolescent communication, right. Because there's a difference between early adolescence and late adolescence. Right. Late adolescence, 11th and 12th graders, and they're much, much more adult-like.
Right.
9 through 13 are much more childlike.
Right.
Okay. And the other thing is that somewhere between 9 and 13, 10 and 14, you have the onset of puberty. Mm-hmm. And with the onset, the early stages of puberty are the most difficult time for most teenagers. Right. Once they've gone through it, after 2 or 3 years after the onset of puberty, kids begin to settle down a little bit. Mm-hmm. But these first few years are pretty rough. So these early adolescents are kind of a unique subgroup.
Right.
And we need to deal with them.
Right. And this is the infamous middle school years.
That's right. These are the hard years.
Mm-hmm. I hate middle school.
Mm-hmm. These are tough years for kids, and they're tough on teachers, and they're tough on parents. Yeah. Because this is when these behaviors really appear in their most intense form.
Yeah, it's really challenging. So, primarily we're talking about issues with communication during this stage of development.
Right.
And how it changes. It is very different.
That's right. And the reason it's different...
Well, he has a couple of things listed.
Right. Well, the reason it's different is because when children move... With the onset of puberty, children change. They become more disorganized. Mm-hmm. Okay, personal disorganization. They can't keep track of things and all the things that happen. Second, negativity.
Right.
Okay, there's a negativity set. You have these happy little kids who always want to be with you. Suddenly they become sullen teenagers.
Right.
It seems to happen very quickly.
Right.
Third, they become, you get more resistance. Mm-hmm. The kids who were with you, they jump in, hey, you want to go to the hardware store, go to the grocery store, and all of a sudden, no, I don't want to be seen in public with you.
Yeah.
They're always testing limits. Where are the boundaries here? They didn't do a lot of that before, but suddenly they're testing limits. Yeah. And then their language changes.
Right.
Okay. The way they talk to you, the way they respond to you. And most parents have gone through this where kids they change the way they talk to us. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what he's doing in this article is he's taking on this last one about what do we do about that language, okay? And he lists has a nice little list of things you can do.
Right, right. Now, one of the issues that he talks about is inattention.
Right.
And he talks about how as kids are going through these developmental stages, they have so much going on that they are more inattentive.
They're more inattentive because all of a sudden life becomes... Think of the difference between a 5th grader and a 6th grader, just in school. Mm-hmm. We expect more at home when they get to middle school. They have 7 or 8 teachers, whereas before they had 2 or 3 teachers. Right. And some had 1 teacher, okay? But let's say they had a few teachers in elementary school and everything was close and they knew the principal and they knew everything. Right. They had a lay of the land. Suddenly they get thrown into a large middle school and there's too much to keep track of. So they are less attentive.
Right. So as parents, we have to help structure that. And you say, let's talk a little bit more, make sure that you have eye contact, ask for them to repeat back to you what you said so that you know that they heard you, so they were attending and that they heard what you said. And so some of those simple strategies will help with the inattentive part.
Because chances are they're not giving you their full attention. Okay?
Right, because
but know that
right.
and talk accordingly.
Right, right. Now the second thing that we were talking about is privacy.
Right.
They want to be more private. They want to be more to themselves and everything. And so as parents, there's some things that we have to do to help address that. So we have to do things like, giving them some privacy.
Right.
While encouraging them to talk with you and to share with you when things are critical and important and all that.
Right. They want you to know less.
Right.
Okay, so please understand, they're not going to give you the full story.
Right.
You're not going to get the whole story.
Right.
But that's okay.
Right.
You probably don't need it, and you don't want to press it because they want to keep some things to themselves.
Because the more you press, the more they're going to keep away.
The more they're going to resist.
Right. So they're going to want to be more private, but as parents, we have to allow that to happen.
That's
going to be part of their separation and work towards independence. Yeah.
Right.
The third thing is one that we've talked about a lot is lying.
I like this one a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, they're going to lie.
Part of he mentions two things in here which really helped to clarify lying for me. One was consent, and see that paragraph where he says consent. Yeah. The consent awakening is understanding how parents can't make them do anything or stop them from doing it. Now the young person no longer operates under the childish illusion that parents are in command.
Right.
So they're not seeking our consent anymore.
Right. So the issue is that parents can't make them do anything without the kid's consent.
The child consenting.
Right.
Okay. They didn't have to before.
Right.
You just did it.
Right.
Your parents told you did it.
Right.
Okay. Now, so this comes under lying, which I think is neat the way you put that in there.
Right. And the other part that goes along with this is the information, the sharing of information.
Informing.
And I think that parents, I'm going to say I have a problem when parents consider a lie of omission. I don't like that idea.
Right.
Because they're going to want to be private. They're going to want to keep some things to
themselves.
themselves.
Thing again.
And if we consider that to be lying, then we're going to, because we see lying as an intentional attempt to deceive, which is that's what the definition of lying is, but that's not what they're doing.
Right.
That's
right.
They don't. That's something for them that they want to keep for themselves.
Parents have to be thoughtful, and they have to think: did he lie? Was the lie consequential, or was it just a matter of he wanted to keep some privacy, and it was inconsequential? The fact that he didn't tell me something really doesn't change anything.
Right.
Okay. Now, if it's a game changer and he left it out, say, "Oh yeah, I whatever." If the omission is consequential, then you want to deal with it. But in most cases, kids are not holding back consequential information. It's inconsequential stuff that they want to keep private because they're at a different developmental stage.
Right. And we got to think about what we model to their kids also. I mean, if your kid's birthday is coming up and you're planning a surprise party and they say something about, "Hey mom, I want to have a party for my birthday." And you say, "No, I wasn't thinking we would do it," because you know that you have this. Okay, you're lying to your kids, so you're modeling that there are times when we can omit information or we can not give information, and so it's again. I know that it's different, and I know that there'd be the argument that talking about a surprise party is different than something that happened at school, but I don't think that a kid sees that difference, and so
they don't.
Just be mindful of that.
Because remember, these teenagers, it's consent and inform, and keep that in mind if you're dealing with a young teenager.
Right. Now, the next one he mentions is tough talk.
Right.
And man, do you see this one, especially in those middle school years.
This really changed.
They really start to use different vocabulary. They start to say different things, right? And it's much more...
It would go through me when my daughter would say, "Well, this dude did that," and I think, it's just not you,
Yeah.
It is.
It is, yeah. So be ready for it. Be ready for them to use those words. Be ready for them to use words that you don't know.
And that you don't really approve of.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
But again, don't let your hair burst into flames.
Right. I've mentioned before that I coach a soccer team.
Yeah, they're foul.
You don't want to be on the field with us when we're practicing and stuff. I mean, they use words and I could spend however much time trying to redirect that every single time. But they know, you can see the difference when they're on the pitch with us, me and my the other coaches, versus when other parents are on the pitch with us, or when we're in at a game or something like that. The vocabulary is different.
And they control it when they need to control it.
They talk to each other differently.
Right. And this is what we want our kids to do. And I would say to my children, look, that's appropriate. When you're out with your friends, it's okay. But not at the dinner table.
Right.
Okay. And that's what we want kids to learn.
Right.
Is how do you distinguish between the two? So your kids might, when they're in private practices, they might use that. In a game, they're not doing it. With other people around, they're not doing it.
Right.
If they do, then you can remind them that this isn't the place for them.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and it is a lot of tough talk, because this idea of vocabulary and everything sort of encompasses the next few.
Right.
I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, all that tough talk that comes out during these years. But the next one is talking in code. They say words that we don't know.
And I love if I hope you all read this section. If you do, go through all.
I love the first one. Yeah, I forgot could mean that I choose not to remember.
That's right. They use this code. You don't trust me can mean you don't believe me.
Right.
Don't worry can mean your fears are interfering with my freedom.
Right.
I love these. So if you pull these up, go ahead and read through. They're true but humorous.
But you know what? Some of them too are like ones that parents use all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So when you say in a minute, could mean for as long as I choose to delay.
I love that one. In a minute. I'll do it in a minute, because what do parents come in and tell us? Well, I tell him to do something, but he doesn't do it for 2 or 3 days.
Right.
I know.
And
that's how they're built.
And we'll see. Kids know what that means.
We'll see.
So, the last one is aversion to conversations, or aversions to conversions.
Right.
They're having difficulty with all kinds of things when they're communicating. They're again, it's part of this code. It's part of this different vocabulary. But really, what we're getting at is that they're taking on this extreme. He says it here: extreme stand against the opposite position.
That's right. When they're younger, you hear kids say this all the time. Oh no, I'm never going to do drugs. I have an aversion to drugs. And they're told, just say no. So I have this aversion. No, I'll never do that. Or, ooh, that. When you talk about sex to children, they'll say, ooh, that's gross. The conversion is what was scary at 11 is attractive at 13.
Right.
Okay. And they go through this conversion process. And you have to be aware of that suddenly this stuff that was gross or scary or distasteful suddenly becomes very attractive.
Right. And that's why we see those significant shifts during that time where they become very, very different than their parents.
Right.
Because usually those things that they saw as gross and aversive when they were younger, usually model or are pretty similar to where the parents are.
That's right.
And then as they make this transition, those things become a little bit more attractive because it is different. It is foreign. It is
and it's
romanticized.
It's what the other kids are doing.
Right.
It's what their peers are doing, and their peers are becoming more important than their parents.
Right. So they had that conversion, and they'll use different words for it, and they'll instead of being ooh and gross, it'd be like, oh, it's cool, or it's this or it's that, and you have to be able to keep up with that vocabulary and that code. And
you have to be able to keep up.
And you have to be okay with it.
You have to be able to keep up. So if you have a youngster who's approaching these teenage years, or you have a young teenager, take a look at this. There's a lot of good stuff in this little article.
It's a good article. So
good reminders, and a little bit of wisdom here.
Yeah.
So take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So all right, that's it.
That's it.
So
we did it.
Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.